Okay, hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of another Dive in the Jukebox. Today, my guest is an OG guitarist, singer-songwriter, and glam rock veteran Roni Lee.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, Roni, thank you so much again for being on my show. Like, honestly, it's such an honor. I have been a huge fan of the Runaways since I was about 21. That's when I read Cherie's book. Well, actually,
Okay.
the movie even before that when I was 18. And then I read her memoir and I became a complete and total fan. And like obviously by listening to the Runaway songs and also by doing like a whole bunch of reading on the internet, that's how I found out about you. And I know that you and Kim Fowley co-wrote "I Want to Be Where the Boys Are."
Right. Yeah, the co-writing thing is a little interesting deal because with Kim Fowley, I Want to Be With the Boys was the first song I ever wrote. And when I got the job in Venus and the Razorblades, because the Runaways were already formed and we were all came from the same group of young kids. He sent us all home from rehearsal and said, "Don't come back if you don't write a song." And I was like, I had never written a song before. So I thought I went out and I saw the motels because they were playing at the Starwood. So I had a night with Martha. And then I thought, it would be really nice if I could just be accepted as a guitar player just on the pure merit of the fact that I'm a guitar player and I don't have to prove it or whatever. So I thought, just like what boys do, they just say they're guitar players and people believe them. So I wrote, "I Want to Be Where the Boys Are." Well, Kim's rule is he's got to write something in the song. So he wrote, "I'm the bitch with the hot guitar." That was his contribution to "I Want to Be Where the
And
Boys Are."
the only line he wrote.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
There's an old saying in the music industry: write a word, get a third. So, but you know what? It was part of the deal with being in the band. So that's fine. Now I do have a bunch of lyrics that Kim gave me right before he passed away. Some for three other punk tunes that he wanted me to complete at some point in my music journey, and I've got them. And he had a little bit of a rough time there after he passed away. So there were, with the accusations and all that sort of thing, which, I don't really get into all that. But so I decided to hang on to these tunes, and I will write them at some point and get them out there as Kim Valley tunes. So, and they're in his handwriting. It's kind of cool. So I'll get those done one of these days.
Yeah, that's
Actually, pardon me?
yeah, it's definitely really cool that he gave them to you right before he passed away. And gosh, that's
Yeah.
a decade
Yeah.
ago already. Like it's hard to believe that. When exactly did he die? It wasn't like it was in January something 2015.
2015. I was at NAM actually, and Shree and Joan, we still stay in touch. And so they wanted me to go, but I was working and I didn't make it. But I was with him for a long time before that. We sort of reunited, and Kara from Peer Publishing, who's now moved on, of course, but she was married to him. So we were good friends. She worked for the publishing company that all of our songs are published through. So kind of yeah. So she brought me in, and so Kim was actually in his voice anyway. He introduces the "I Want to Be Where the Boys Are" video that I did. I don't know, when is that, 15 years, whatever, a few years back when he was still with us. So yeah, not too long ago.
That's definitely a pretty cool backstory. I mean, I do have a lot of questions that concern you,
Okay.
him, and Joan Jett and Sandy West, because I know that you guys have lived together at some
Yep.
point, like in
Yep.
the 70s, I believe it was.
Yep. Sandy and I were roommates. We lived in Santa Monica, and I Joan and I were, we were all very, very good friends. And at one point, there was an apartment on right off of Sunset that few of us lived in. Lita didn't live there, but Joan and I did. And then Sandy and I ended up getting an apartment in Santa Monica for a while, roommates. But what's funny is we were all under 18, and people were close to their parents, and I suppose saw them, but we were all just living in apartments in Hollywood by ourselves. I don't know how that worked out, but there wasn't any supervision like there is now. In fact, from the Runaways movie, Kristen Stewart And Dakota Fanning, they did an interview and they said, you know, the big difference between then and now is they would never treat underage minor artists like that, like they did us, and we were just on our own, just wandering the streets. It's pretty wild, actually, when you think about it.
It was definitely really wild, and it was one of the things that like really intrigued me and also shocked me a little bit when I was reading. So I said I read Cherie's book, I read Lita's book, but that was a long time ago. I need to reread it.
Right,
Um, let's see. I think I also read some articles regarding Carrie Chrome. She,
right.
yeah, she was one of the songwriters for the Runaways. I don't think that she actually sang or neither did she play an instrument, but she was involved with the Runaways for a
She was
while.
involved with some of the writing early, very early on, and she and I still are in touch as well.
I see. Yeah, and obviously, I do know that there are a lot of really like sketchy stuff concerning Kim and the girls, and like what some of the things that he did to them, some of the things that he put them through. Like obviously, I'm not gonna touch on any of that in the interview because I know it's like sketchy
Sure,
material. As
right,
curious as I am, like uh, I do have questions, but I'm afraid to ask them. And in fact, I actually contemplated for a while doing an interview with Cherie because
uh-huh,
my introduction to her is how my whole obsession with rock and roll really started because I saw the Runaways back in 2010 when it came out. I
right,
did. I read her book a few years later. I loved it, and I became like this huge fan of hers.
right.
And I have thought about maybe interviewing her for quite some time now, but unfortunately, I believe that the things that like I'm curious about the most, like in her memoir and like in her biography in general, she probably wouldn't be too comfortable talking about, and that's why like
It
I
depends. Everybody's got their own approach to that. Some are very outspoken. Cherie's probably one of the most outspoken people I've ever known in my life. I mean, if Cherie's got an opinion, you will hear it, and I love her for that. She makes no apologies for anything that she says, and that's one of the reasons why she and I are still friends, because I like that. And the only thing that I don't do is I don't. There's of course a lot of stories that I don't talk about, but I also will say this, and this has been my stance on everything. I never saw anyone do anything that they didn't want to do, uh, uh, and and in rock and roll, that's a lot. Let's just say that. The Motley Crue movie and all the stuff that went down with them, it just goes on and on and on and on. It's the late 70s, early 80s. I did have a Coke vial around my neck with a spoon hanging on it because I had no idea, didn't even occur to me that it was illegal. Just didn't occur to me. I snorted Coke with Robin Williams at the Comedy Store. He was just got a new show called Mork and Mindy. So these are things that we did in Hollywood, and I not to excess. From my perspective, it was never excessive. I know a lot of people were. I was more of a party, but I was pretty laid back. I was raised pretty conservatively, to be honest with you. But rock and roll just let off all the. There was no rules. There just weren't any rules. And like I said, and there weren't any parents around to to enforce them if there were rules. So what it was is just a wild abandonment, with these teenagers. And then we were hanging around with, Led Zeppelin and Richie Blackmore and Deep Purple and, you know, all the comedians because the Hyatt House was right next to the Comedy Store, which has always been there, and even back then, and all the new comedians were there. Steve, I mean, it was crazy. Now, when you look back, of course, you wish that you could have realized what was going on and what you were seeing. I mean, I'm sitting there hanging out with Robert Plant, at the Rainbow during Songs Remains the Same, and Jeff Beck, and oh my gosh, Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent sat with me at a table at the Rainbow, and he goes, "So you're a guitar player, huh?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you're gonna get pregnant, and that'll be the end of that." And I was just like, fuck you. And he wasn't completely wrong. I did end up getting married later and semi-retiring in the 90s, but um, you know, I just, all these people that were there every night. You know, it's kind of a sad thing to almost go now because it's just not like it was. You know, when you remember it like that, it's a little like the whiskey, and some of the clubs aren't there anymore, Gazaris and Starwood, stuff like that. But the big ones are there. You know, Troubadour's still there. Some things never. The buildings don't change. The people have. So.
Yeah, so yeah, you mentioned that the you hang out at the Comedy Store. When did that place open anyway?
Oh wow, I'm not a very good historian with dates, but it was open in the 70s, so it must be a long time.
Oh my goodness. I have been
Pauly Shore's mom owned it. Is it Dinah Shore? Is that her name? So it's Pauly Shore's mom, and she's had it for, I think, since that time. And it was when where everybody was working out their stuff. You know, I mean, famous comedians still do their skits there once in a while, just showing up. Steve Martin was there. I remember running into him, Billy Crystal, you know, all those guys from SNL. When they would come to the West Coast, that's where they would go, you know. So it was like I said, you know, Robin Williams was there all the time, all the time. He was a big Sunset Boulevard hangout too. You know, not funny, not a funny guy. It's weird with comedians. They're not funny when you're just hanging out with them. He's like, they go on stage and they're funny, and then all of a sudden, you know, like Steve Martin's kind of a sad sack, really.
well, they're getting paid for it, I guess. You know, it's like, what's the point of doing it if you aren't like getting paid for it?
I guess I think they're, but I see, like, I never got a chance to meet Chris Farley. He's one of my favorite comedians, and I think that guy is funny all the time. I've heard stories about it. He was a cut up in school, and I think he's just a guy like that. But there's a lot of those comedians, they're very introverted, you know, and they just, and it takes a special kind of crazy to be a comedian, even worse than musicians. And we're pretty bad. So
I have Laugh Factory a few times over
uh-huh.
the past 5 years, I'd say, and honestly, I did not have a good experience there. Mostly because the service there is really slow.
Oh,
Every
that's
time
true.
I went there, the service there has been incredibly slow. I'm
Yeah.
not particularly crazy about their menu because they don't have any real food on there. Last time I went there, a friend and I went last August for his birthday. I
Uh-huh.
specifically didn't eat before the show because I totally forgot that they only have like snack foods and stuff.
Bad snack foods.
Yeah, I was starving like the entire time, and
Yeah.
we didn't get particularly good seats. And I didn't find the show. Well, actually, maybe I didn't enjoy the show because it was for the lack of food and the lack of drinks and
If
this.
you're uncomfortable and you're focusing on that, you don't get a chance. You know, I I didn't even go to that many shows. I just hung out with the comedians because they were always around. You know, there was the Denny's on Sunset that, you know, Rodney Bingenheimer still, I think to this day, eats pancakes there. You know, it's just the iconic places, and these guys are all part of rock and roll at the time, you know. And of course, we used to call the Hyatt the Riot House because that's where Zeppelin threw the TVs out the window, and they really did do that. So, you
And
know,
Morrison stood on top of the balcony at one point, threatening to jump.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All that's true. Yeah. Sunset Sound is still there. I did a couple albums at Sunset Sound, and that's where the Doors recorded, and Van Halen recorded there. And great recording studio. It's amazing. Still there,
Okay,
fortunately.
you said Sunset Sound.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta check it out because I have walked up and down to Sunset Boulevard countless times over the
Yeah.
6 years. That's when I first like really discovered it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never even heard of that recording studio being there. So I definitely gotta check it out.
Oh, you've got to go to Sunset Sound. You can go in usually, and they've got all the pictures. It used to be an old an old car repair place way back in the whenever the 50s. So the floors were sloped down so that the engine oil would drain down. So what happened was they turned it into a recording studio, and they discovered that these uneven walls and this slight change in, you know, whatever the flooring actually made a fantastic live recording studio. So they've never changed it. And the Neve boards, the original analog boards, are still in there. The board that they recorded Zeppelin 5, I think, is still in there. It's an amazing, before it goes away, because most recording studios are going away, you need to check out Sunsets Down. I still got a couple of the coffee mugs that I got when I did my albums there. Hanging on to those for dear life. But yeah, it's an awesome studio.
Yeah, I definitely need to check it out. Like I
Yeah,
said, it's like
yeah,
I've already been to the Sunset Strip thousands of times.
sure.
Yeah, I need to see that place.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so we didn't even get to the questions yet.
Okay, let's go.
Anyway, so my first question for you is, how old were you when you started playing guitar and singing and writing songs?
Well, those are all different. Those are different years. I started playing guitar at 12 years old because my brother had a guitar and I used to beat him up and take everything from him that he ever had. And so I beat him up. I didn't beat him up, but I did take the guitar away from him. I probably hit him a little bit. I'm not sure. I usually did. And I thought, well, this is really fun. And I started listening to music and playing the guitar. And it was just an acoustic. It was a classical actually, but we weren't allowed to listen to rock and roll when we were young. We were raised very conservatively, like I said. So I had to sneak away and listen to Black Oak, Arkansas, and the Stones, and Zeppelin, and I just thought it would be so powerful and so awesome to play guitar. And I didn't realize that girls just didn't do that. This was mid-70s. So so by the time I wrote my first song was 1976 or 7 when I wrote this. I Want to Be Where the Boys Are for those guys, and then the Runaways picked it up, and I cut all their hair for their albums too. I was the only one that could do a Rod Stewart haircut back then. So I have a picture of me and me cutting Cherie's hair somewhere. Pretty funny, but so it was a span of about 5 years until I actually wrote a song. But again, I didn't want to be a songwriter. I didn't want to be a singer. I just wanted to be a lead guitar player. It's all I really wanted to be. And then eventually, in order to express, when I started writing, thank you, Kim, for forcing me. So then I started writing, and of course now I write all the time. I do songwriter festivals now and stuff. But I found out it's a great way to express yourself. And I'm a performer. Performance is my thing. I love doing that. I'm not a studio rat. I do the studio stuff because I have to, because you got to go in the studio to record, but I'm not a fan of it. It's too, I'm too insecure. And like, I got to do that solo 12,000 times, and then people just say, okay, stop. It's good. It's fine. Move on. So pretty young. I think that it grabs you really young. I talk to a lot of people that want to start later, and that's great. You should start playing anytime. But when you start young like that, it just gets inside of you. Like it just becomes part of your life and who you are,
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So I Want to Be Where the Boys Are was the first song you ever wrote?
Ever wrote, yeah, ever. And I made the most money off of that one. I do that when I do songwriting talks, and I own a little record label, and I tell people, I go, don't ever underestimate your songs and the length of life that they have, because you can pull it out and redo it. I've re-recorded it 2 or 3 times. It's on my vinyl that I did a couple of years ago. And because it takes on new life as the decades go by. You change things, and it's your song. Do what you want. So I enjoy doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean it's so cool how it was your very first song that you wrote, and
Right.
it was picked up by one of the hottest teenage girl bands back then.
Well, it wasn't. Remember, they weren't very hot at the time. The
Oh,
Runaways
that's true.
did not
That's true.
become successful until long after they had broken up. They became successful. I mean, they had some. They played, and they were on a label that supported them, but they didn't really get out there and become, well known until Joan's I Love Rock and Roll came out in '83, which she didn't write, but she made that song what it was. So then off from there, and then our songs started selling and all that sort of thing. And then when the movie came out, and and now I do licensing. I have a version of Cherry Bomb out there as well, and just it's now these days musicians make their money mostly in licensing.
I see.
You know, you walk through a store and hear somebody's cherry bomb, somebody's making money. Because we're not making money selling these. So yeah, but that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, question number 2.
Yeah, question number 2.
You're right, it's gonna take a while.
When you were 17, you moved to Hollywood and landed the lead guitar spot with Venus and the Razorblades.
Right.
You told me a little bit about that before, but can you tell me like about that whole experience more in depth?
Oh, that was a blast. So I was working in Reno in a show band, making money and hanging out with a little guy that was my same height as Rick Derringer. So, and Johnny Winter, and those guys were all there. For some reason, they were doing shows there too. And I said to him, I read this, you know, because back then he only had newspapers and stuff. And I said, they were having auditions for this new band after the Runaways called Venus and the Razorblades. Kim Fowley was putting together. Well, I wanted to do the Runaways, but I never heard of them. I'm like, an all-girl band, I should have done that. So I called Kim Fowley. I guess his phone number must have been in the paper. I don't know how that worked. And he hung up on me 3 times.
What?
You're not a guitar player. You're trying to get an interview. Click. You're not a guitar player. You're trying to get an interview. Click. Finally, I call like, you gotta, you know, and I said, I am a guitar player. Not kidding. I don't know why you think I'm kidding, but I am a guitar player. So he said, okay, then next week, be in LA, dressed for stage and playing the guitar when I walk in your house. Well, I didn't have a house in LA. I'm from LA, but I was practically living in Reno doing these shows. But I had a friend who was in LA. She was a guitar player, and she had this little teeny crappy apartment on Hollywood and Gower with, you know, cockroaches and whatever. It was little. And she goes, you can come stay with me and sleep in my walk-in closet and do this audition. So I did. And and Rick Derringer gave me a silver lame jumpsuit, which I got a few pictures of. I don't have a jumpsuit anymore. Zip up the front, which is another funny story. And anyway, so I set up my Marshall stack and my Flying V guitar, and Stephen Tesh, who's the singer, he was Venus, and Kim walk in, and I'm playing Jeff Beck songs, and he hired me. So I got the job. I knew I was going to get the job. How many girl guitar players can play Jeff Beck in 1977? Probably not. Probably none.
Many, yeah, definitely not many. But that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. He was pretty surprised. I know. I don't think he expected it, because the auditions that we held after that, you know, there wasn't a lot of players. That's why he treated the writers and the players very well. We were treated very well. We were very treated for me, very respectfully, and I didn't have any issues with anybody, because I was the songwriter and I was a guitar player, and they're just, you know, there's just a handful of us anywhere. So girls, you know, especially young girls. So yeah, so that I got the job, piece of cake, getting it. I mean, it wasn't a piece of cake getting it, but the travel and the jumpsuits and the sleeping in the, you know, closet and all that. But, you know, that's the way it goes.
Also, after you joined the band, where did you live? Because you said you didn't live in LA.
I stayed in that apartment with my girlfriend. There was 3 of us, her and I and another guy, 3 guitar players. So I slept in the walk-in closet for quite a while. And then I moved into an apartment with Joan, I think, for a little bit. And then, because Joan and I got really close, we were super good friends because we looked alike. You know, we were running around. We were both crazy about Suzi Quatro, and I was more of a guitar player than Joan was. So she would come and watch me play all the time, and she was, you know, crazy. She's so crazy. Joan was rock and roll. She wanted to live rock and roll, no question about it. She if anybody was an icon of rock, Joan just exuded it more than any of them. And then Sandy needed a roommate, so I moved in with Sandy and got out of Hollywood area and moved into Santa Monica. And then we all just flittered around.
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that Joan had an apartment that was right across the street from the Whiskey A Go Go. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to think, was it where the gas station was, or was it where
It was kind of, no, it actually wasn't right across the street. It was down towards Old World, down more towards, do you know where Tower Records is?
yeah,
A
I
little
know.
bit down. So, and it was across the street from that on the other side. So it was
Oh,
on this, and then back, there's some apartments back there. So
mhm.
it was back there. And that's where Kim's apartments were too. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
see. Yeah, yeah. I have a pretty
It
good.
wasn't right across the street, but it was pretty close. It was within a couple blocks.
That's
But
true. Yeah.
yeah, there was Licorice Pizza. It used to be a place called Licorice Pizza on the kitty corner from the whiskey. It was a record store, a vinyl record store. That's why it's called Licorice Pizza. It's black. But anyway, that's gone now. But it was Joan and I hung out there a lot. All of us did. Licorice Pizza was one of our favorite hangouts, more so than Tower Records, I think.
Hmm.
Smaller store, but very cool. Uh, and then, but yeah, it was in that same block, that same area, but not right across the street. Yeah.
I see. That definitely clears it up because, like, I always imagined that it was right where that gas station is. I can't remember it's yet. There's like a food mart and a gas station there.
Yeah, no, it wasn't right there. It was it was in there was in the apartment. All of those behind those is all apartments. And so she was behind that, but just about a block east of that
Yeah.
across, yeah. Uh-huh. Kind
Yeah.
of where the road splits, an old that restaurant sits right there in that V across from Tower Records, kind of back in there.
Yeah. It's where the Dialogue Cafe is, right?
Yes. Yeah. It used to be called Old
I,
World, but yeah.
I know where that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was it like to play music in the 70s, LA glam and punk rock scene, especially for a woman?
Oh my gosh. It was actually, you know, a lot of people kind of get like it was difficult. I didn't have any problems with it. I had a blast. Everybody was super nice to me and accepting, because there were so many different people coming in to play them. We played the whiskey with the Ramones, and Van Halen were glam rockers, still. And then the Dolls, New York Dolls, they were very glam. They played there quite often. And we would just all wrestle. We'd just get in there and we were so hyped up all the time. It was always about getting hyped up. And so Joan and I, and like I remember one night we played with Van Halen at the whiskey, and we just wrestled like fake fought, you know. And me and Joan, we had these huge platform shoes, like ridiculous, and we just slammed them through the wall at the whiskey and like put a hole in the wall. And that wall at the whiskey had everybody's name on it, had Ramones on it, had and I've asked them a couple of times, I go, where's the old wall that used to be here in the old dressing room? There, I go, I don't know. I go, somebody needs to find that thing because it's got everybody on it. And me and Joan's boot marks and everything. But David Lee Roth, we'd wrestle, like I would be on his shoulders and Joan would be on Mike's shoulders, bass player, and we would be fighting like wrestling up there. Just insane, just to get pumped up, because it was always about that. And I never had any issues that I can recall, with being who I was, because I was very comfortable in who I was, and I would let people know it. And there was a lot of we weren't delicate at all. So I think people were mostly scared when you're really like that, no matter what size you are and who you are, it's a little intimidating. So we were kind of intimidating probably. So I didn't get any much pushback. But the minute you let people see you sweat, especially back then, that's when they would lay into you. So I made sure that no one ever did. So it wasn't easy, but it was, I didn't run into a whole lot of pushback. I had the Ted Nugent guys and those comments and some of the hair bands, sure. I still run into that sometimes, once in a while, but I don't care. It rolls off my shoulder, but it never occurred to me not play. So it's like with Joan and I had the same attitude. We're like, yeah, whatever. We're still going to do it.
Definitely sounds like Joan because she was extremely determined.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And she was passionate too. And I think that's what made like a lot of people really respect her. And it sounds like you did the exact same thing. It's like you never acted like you were like scared
Yeah.
place or anything, and it made people respect you, and it made people like not wanna like intimidate you or scare you.
Well, like when someone would say no, most we have the kind of personalities where we just want to do it more.
Hmm.
Like, really? You're gonna tell me no? I don't think so. So, and yet that I don't know if that takes a type of personality or something, because a lot of people would just, I'm not saying that hasn't been times that I haven't been intimidated by people. There's been a few, but um I tend to look at everybody very evenly, like we're all on an even deal. I don't look down on people, but I also don't look up to them like they're. I'm very respectful. Jeff Beck was one of is my favorite guitar player, was, whatever. And he used to come and watch me play, and I would be quite terrified, And he came up to me one time at the Starwood and he says, "Yeah, the only girl I ever saw that could play guitar." And I was like, "Oh God," my hero. That made my day, And he couldn't see, he was a rude little fucker too. He let you know it, He didn't have a lot of. He was a sweetheart of a guy, as long as he felt like being that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's you definitely. I mean, it's definitely lucky that he was so sweet to you. But then again, you deserved it. So
Well, I kind of the David Grohl school of everything. Don't let people's criticisms and things like that really get to you. It's hard to not do that. You can say it, but it's hard not to, because you can have everybody in the room is crazy about your music, and that one guy standing in the corner looks bored. You want to win that guy over. So we're very insecure people in reality, most musicians. But at the same time, um, what he says, and this is very true, he says, just be good at what you do. That's the best revenge. It's the only way to get back at anybody. Just be good at what you do, because there's nothing anybody can say then. And yes, it's subjective, and people can like you or dislike you, but if you're the best that you can be, then you don't have anything really to be insecure about.
yeah,
So
and honestly, that goes for pretty much like all aspects of life, and
everything.
yeah, it definitely applies to that time and to this modern time as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like, well, and people, and I don't really have, like, I don't have much pushback on social media. I don't have much criticism. I've been very transparent about who I am, and the kind of music I write, and what inspires me to write it. And they don't have to listen. They don't want to. But it's like, I don't you don't have to like it, but I want you to at least hear it, and then you can let me know. And that's the kind of thing that I've always said, well, let me play for you. And then we'll see where it goes. So most of the time it's worked out pretty well. And like I said, to do my homework.
yeah. Speaking of your music, I need to check it out again because I remember that I listened to you quite a bit back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that that was the first time that I ever officially met you in person. I don't think you might remember it, but I remember that it was at Maui Sugar Mill Saloon.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. And that was the album that we did at Sunset Sound, actually.
Oh,
A
really?
couple of them right then. That was that whole time period. Yeah. I've been recording in Vegas lately, and then now I just record at my house, to be honest. But this last album was part studio in Vegas, part Seattle, because my co-writer now, Lynn, he's a Seattle guy, so he's my music husband these days. We've done a number of albums together. So, but yeah, Maui Sugar Mill. It's so funny you bring that up, because it's this weird little, if anybody's ever been there, it's this teeniest little place in a strip mall in Tarzana, and it was right down the street from my house where I lived in Tarzana at the time. And so I started playing there just because it was fun. And lo and behold, it's this cool little place that people just like to go and just pack it out and have a good time. So I've been thinking about going back there and doing something at old Maui Sugar Mill. I'd love to see it again. It's still there, so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad that it is, and honestly, I'm really glad that it hasn't closed down during the pandemic because there was
No.
yeah because when everything shut down, they started saying that they don't have enough funds for rent anymore, and then they would have to shut the place down. But thankfully, that didn't happen.
I
And
think somebody did like a GoFundMe or something from, I seem to recall somebody did something for them that helped them, get through it. But yeah, like you, I'm so glad they survived it, because it's just a cool little place. You can never tell what's going to make a club cool. You just can't. You would think some clubs are, destined for greatness because they're perfectly located and there's parking and everything else, and they just don't make it. And then a little place like Maui Sugar Mill, who'd have thought? But it's this weird, teeny little stage, and that's like 6 feet 6 inches tall, and just
Mhm.
it's just weird, but it's a fun place to play. I like it. I gotta
Yeah,
put that on my list. Play Maui Sugar Mill again.
yeah, and I need to visit that place again because last time I was there, it was last October, I believe, the end of last October. So I haven't been there in a while. I
I
haven't.
haven't either. I haven't either. So, but I know it's still there, and I know I have friends that play it. So, yeah, I have
Yeah.
to, have to go hang out at Maui Sugar Mill.
Yeah, I should definitely visit it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my next question for you is, what was especially exciting and special about being a female rocker in the 70s and the 80s?
Oh my gosh. Well, a little bit of good always comes with the bad, and vice versa. Um, and it's probably is not quite the same as today, but it was just so unique. It's just so unique. And like I said, you know, half the time people didn't believe me that I could play guitar. But the other time, then when you show you can, then all of a sudden you're the princess of the ball, because there's a million guy guitar players, and there just are, and there still is. But there was, five girl guitar players. So I had I had a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, you get the opportunity and you got to step up to the plate, and you got to be, and Joan and I have the same approach to this. You got to be twice as good to be considered half as good, because especially if you're playing with the guys, and I don't mean to make it a whole guy girl thing, most of the time when we're all playing together, we're all musicians. If you're playing with the right people, that's how you're treated. But getting into something, yeah, you use whatever you have. And if being a girl guitar player is a novelty and it sells it, great. But I've seen, girl bands be girl bands, and and they're not good. Just and so I always tell people I'm not going to play in a band just because they're girls. I'll play in a band with girls that are good, but not, I'm not going to put a restriction on that, because it's and believe me, I've got friends that have all girl bands, and that's their novelty, and they do covers, and they're all girls, and they're great. I got no problem with that, but that's just not for me. I think people should get jobs on their merit, but let's face it, rock and roll, looks count. You know, I mean, they do. If they a lot of times band guys are hired. Guys are hired too. We want a skinny guy that looks like Jimmy Page. Okay, you know, and there might be another guy, a chubby redhead that plays exactly like Jimmy Page when you shut your eyes, but when you open them. So that's how it's in the entertainment industry. That's how it is, you know.
Absolutely. Looks definitely count in this industry because, like, I mean, you guys are performers,
Yeah.
and on stage, people don't just listen to your music; they also take in your appearance and how you act on
Sure.
stage.
Sure.
Performance.
You've gotta, if you're gonna entertain people, if you're gonna be more than if you're gonna, entertainers and singer and songwriters and studio people, those are all different people. Sometimes they're in the same body, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I use the example of Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Bernie Taupin never performed, had no interest in performing. Fantastic songwriter. Elton John was a ham. He just wanted to. He loved performing, and he could bring people in to a performance like nobody else. So, two different people, two different jobs. Together, they were fantastic. So I'm just, and I tell people all the time, just because you write music doesn't mean you should get on stage and play it. It doesn't always come across. Some people are terrified of the stage, can't do it. It's you need to do what you're good at.
Yeah,
So,
or if you're a songwriter, you don't, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the chops to master an instrument or sing. Because,
right.
because when you're a musician, most of the time you have to be able to do all three.
Yeah, I've known some songwriters. I'm working with one next week in a couple weeks actually. She sent I said I'm playing guitar on her stuff and she sent me her stuff and I said, "Do you have a chord chart?" And she goes, "No, I don't even know chords. I just hummed the words to the engineer and he played it." I go, "Okay." So, she's a singer. She doesn't play an instrument. So she sang the melody and somebody, played along to it. So it's interesting because there's a lot of ways to put that together. I think if you're going to write music, I think it's pretty important that you learn at least to some degree to play an instrument,
Hmm.
whether it's piano or guitar or whatever. It really inhibits, I think, the writing if you can't do that. It's not impossible. People do it, but at least be able to play chords on the piano to put your singing to what your melody correctly. But anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, that's something that I need to learn how to do because I have been taking voice lessons for the past 8 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I only ever learned how to do vocals. I mean, I didn't just like devote like all this time to taking voice lessons. Obviously, I had part-time jobs, I had full-time jobs, I had school.
Sure.
But I do love to sing and I would definitely love to sing on stage, but I do need to learn how to like what the notes are at least. I need to.
Well, a basic interval, yeah, basic lesson in basic music would be very nice to do. But as singers, if you're not going to write, and if you just want to sing, and a lot of singers that's what they do, and they don't write. I'm just talking about songwriting is a little bit different situation. But singing is an instrument. It is an instrument in itself, and you don't necessarily have to play another instrument if that's your chosen instrument. But if you're going to write, this again, my opinion, you should probably have an instrument that makes so that you can compare your melody to what you're writing. But if you're a vocalist, and you're not interested in accompanying yourself on anything, that this is also an instrument. As important, if not more, because this is what people listen to. This instrument is what sells records, by the way. I mean, there's some instrumentalists, of course, out Steve Vai. There's always exceptions, but for the mainstream, this is the instrument that sells records. So it's nothing to be. Yeah, it's not everybody wants to do it. Not everybody can do it. I've had people, try to sing, and they've been trying to sing forever, and it's not working out. Because it's connected to the hearing and the ear and all that stuff. But then again, look at Bob Dylan. So that proved me wrong every time. You can find somebody that you think can't sing. Frank Sinatra, terrible pitch. Guy couldn't hit a note to save his life. But, he did okay.
I should definitely check out Frank Sinatra more because Bob Dylan, I can definitely like understand like how you can say that he is not like a great singer, but he has his own style. And
It's
I
passion. You know what? It's passion that makes the song. Frank Sinatra has passion. He's singing like he's crooning. He's singing with you. You're there. You're wherever it is, fly me to the moon. And you're like, yes, I want to fly to the moon with you, Frank. So it doesn't matter that he's singing on the cracks. In fact, it makes it better. It's not perfect. And it's what gives it personality. Janis Joplin, not perfect. I don't, I purposely kind of slide around and sing on the cracks because I like that. I like that style. I like that. I like the song to have a personality and a passion to it. And sometimes perfection does not create that. So,
yeah, I heard that before as well, but I honestly, I mean, I'm gonna continue practicing until I'll get it perfect.
yes, I mean, you know what you're listening for. You know what you're looking at. One thing that you should do, and you should do this with any instrument, you should record yourself and listen because it doesn't sound the same inside your head as it does in front. It's completely different. And when you listen to like in the studio, I do it all the time. I sing something, I go, oh my God, that was the best thing I ever sang in my life. And then I listen to it and I go, yeah, I don't like that, because, and then, or I'll sing something and I'll go, oh man, that sucked. I'm sorry. And the engineer and Lynn, who produces my stuff, they'll be out there going, holy crap, that was awesome. That's it. Yeah, that's the cut. And I go, okay. And then I'll listen to it and they're right. So what you're hearing in your head is not always, the reality. So I'm just saying, and that can be on any instrument, but voice is especially true on that one. So record yourself.
Yeah, I should definitely record myself. I always feel really weird listening to my own voice recorded, and that's why I never did it. Like I never recorded myself, but I should
Oh,
definitely.
I don't listen. I hardly ever listen to myself. I never watch my own music videos. None of that stuff. Some people are obsessed and they just want to, and I go, Now this new album, there's my co-writer and Lynn, he did such a beautiful job on so much of the violin on this stuff that I just love listening to it. It's just soothing. I mean, it's not mellow soothing, but it's just he just sounds fantastic on it. Dirty Diana and some of the stuff that we do on it is so much fun. But I do listen to it once in a while, not all the time, but when I listen to it, I don't critique it anymore like I used to. Now I just try to enjoy it. Yeah. But
I see. Yeah, I should definitely get around to recording myself. I mean,
yeah.
I've like multiple voice teachers already that it's the best way to correct your mistakes. It's the best
Hmm.
what you're doing wrong. So
Right.
I should definitely get around to doing that.
Yeah. Just sing a song. Sing a song. Get the backing track, sing a song, record it. Even if a lot of times I just use my voice memo on my phone or my iPad and record it on that. It's fine. All that stuff. It doesn't need to be, anything fancy. Just record yourself and listen to it.
I will do that. I will definitely take that advice. Yeah, well, Ronnie, we've been at this for almost an hour and I need to go by 6. And
Okay.
I actually have a whole bunch of more questions for you. I have like 15 questions left.
Okay. Can we knock one of them out, or are you good, or should we not try?
Honestly, I'd rather us pick it up again next
Okay.
time. Because, yeah, like
Okay.
to meet someone at 6:30 and I still need to get ready.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've got a little list here going myself. But yeah, let's pick it up, and next time we'll just hit the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Or actually, maybe we don't even have to do that. I mean, honestly, you have told me so much stuff today, and I really don't mind you like not basically just plainly answering my questions.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. And I do tend to go because a lot of these questions they just have components to them, and you want someone to understand like why you did this or how this affected you. And it just takes a minute, you
Yeah,
know.
but that's actually the whole point of interviewing someone is like you want to know like as much about them as you can. Like you want to know the backstory. And like honestly,
Right.
about so many interesting things, especially concerning like Kim Fowley and the Runaways, because uh, the Runaways are like the very first band, like I said, that really got me into rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah, I read Cherie's book, I read Lita's book, I read some things about them on the internet, and I feel like I know like a bunch of stuff about them. So it's really cool to talk to someone who actually knew these people and who actually lived during that.
Right. Right. And what's funny is the movie is extremely accurate. And in fact, it's probably not as dark as it really was. It was a little darker. And the guy that played Kim, he nailed it. He was great.
Job. Yeah, I mean, honestly, he did an amazing job. He definitely nailed him. Like, yeah, hands down, a great performance.
I
But
mean, Kim would do crazy things. I mean, he pointed at singers in the band, said, "Crawl on your belly like a dog." I mean, he talked to us like that. That's how he talked. But he talked to everybody like that, not just girls, but I mean, mostly girls. I get it now that I think about it. But he was very yeah. He was an interesting character. It would never fly today. It would never fly today. I could never.
yeah, like honestly, he would be in jail in like 5 seconds.
You know, he wouldn't be in jail, but he'd be ostracized. Well, he might be on some things, but he would definitely be ostracized, and he would not be accepted for. But then I had this conversation the other day with somebody. I said, but then so would 80% of the people in LA that time, in Hollywood. I mean, it was crazy. It was, people were having sex under the table at the Rainbow. So I mean, you know, in the restaurant. So you know, not all the time, not 24 hours a day, but it wasn't unusual. And there was a lot of stuff going on back then that just is not, just doesn't happen anymore. Like, and like I said, the fact that we were underage girls, I mean, I you know, sometimes I marvel at the fact that we're, you know, we're still here and we made it through it somehow. So are all the stories true? I don't think so. Are some of them true? Of course. You know, I don't know. But it was, I mean, Wilt Chamberlain used to send cars down to Hollywood Boulevard and just pick people up and take them up to his house. And the parties up there, I can't talk about either, but it was crazy. Let me just say, Cher was there one night. I mean, it's nuts.
Well, yeah, you're making me jealous. I mean, honestly, I was definitely born in the wrong time.
So many people, well, it's funny, and like I said, I wish that I'd known at the time what I was in, but no, but none of us did, because we were all just kids. But you know, it was a crazy time. It was a crazy time. And it's a little bit sad for me to go there now, because it's not like that anymore, of course, and that part of it. But even the romance, just the romantic part of what it is, you know, whiskey's all pay to play now, and you know, everything's pay to play, and everybody wants to go there and try to recreate it, but you just never will. Just never, it'll never be like that, of course. I mean, there's a lot of cool things going on, but it's not that. It's just not the beginning of rock and roll. And I feel like that was the beginning of so much music, you know. It's crazy. It's one of my favorite, it's my favorite time period. So, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can definitely see why it was your favorite time period.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 90s, you know, eight, anything after the 90s, I'm not even sure if I like at all. I mean, no, it's there. We'll talk about it next time, but there is a resurgence of it, and people are doing vinyl, and classic rock bands, young classic rock bands are coming up, and it's never going to take over again like it was, but it's not going to die out like we thought either. That's my feeling about it. Hopefully I'm right. Cross our fingers.
Yeah, hopefully you're right too, because I definitely wouldn't want rock and roll to die out completely.
Well, I'm doing a whole punk rock show with punk rock bowling in Las Vegas in May. So it's all about punk rock. There's a punk rock museum there. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll tell you about that too next time.
Absolutely, yeah, and I gotta add that question to my list.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Current punk rock things we need to go to. So, all right.
Ronnie, thank you so much, and I will definitely next time.
Okay. Thank you, and have a good night tonight.
You
Okay.
too.
Peace out.